Good afternoon. Uh, on behalf of Dr. Deb Rodenberg and myself, I'm Julie Sauer from Papillion La Vista Community Schools. It's really our pleasure to join you here this afternoon for this session on leading district health services. We invite you into our presentation through the bit.ly that's theoretically on the screen right now. I'm seeing Adam and Cheyenne nod. Oh, good. I got the thumbs up from Cheyenne. So you can either enter that route or we will drop this in the chat so that you can have access to not only the presentation, but a number of links that will take you behind the curtain, so to speak, of Papillion La Vista Community Schools as Dr. Rodenberg and I go through our presentation. We intend for this to be as conversational as possible. So Adam and Cheyenne, please feel free to ask us questions as we move from slide to slide. Okay, well, I'm Julie Sauer, and I am actually the secondary curriculum director for Papillion La Vista Community Schools. In prior lives, I spent a lot of time in Bellevue Public Schools, where I did a stint as the director of K-12 curriculum instruction and assessment. Within that purview, K-12 HAL services and programming fell. And it is also during that time that I first got to work with Mr. Adam Larson, who's now at ESU3. And he could, of course, and perhaps will, regale you with some of our stories from the field from that time together. And then I had an opportunity to kind of bittersweet leave Bellevue Public Schools for ESU number 3, where I was the director of professional learning. And during that time, Adam came to ESU 3 from Bellevue Public Schools, where he now serves as both the high ability learning specialist for ESU 3 and as the assistant director of the professional learning department. I would share before Dr. Rodenberg introduces herself that when I was in my position in Bellevue Public Schools, I would hear a lot from parents who would be sharing with me comparative services and activities that were provided students in our neighbor Papillion La Vista Community Schools. So for many years before I got to come here, I was in awe of what Papillion La Vista Community Schools was doing and has done and continues to do. And all of that that I heard about and tried to research on my own and even crack into some of their computer documents. Adam, were you with me when I was always trying to get into the Papillion La Vista stuff for HAL?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So all of that was foundationally laid, or the foundation for all of that was laid by my counterpart, Dr. Deb Rodenberg. So Deb, would you please introduce yourself now?
So I'm Deb Rodenberg. I'm Julie's counterpart. I'm the elementary director of curriculum. And I also get the privilege of working with the federal title programs again this year, and also with the high ability learner program. Started my career as a special education teacher, moved into principal role as a principal of non-traditional programs, medically fragile, dual diagnostic, those kinds of programs. Principal in Glenwood in the Iowa district, and then moved as principal to Papillion La Vista Community Schools. And then I've been in my current role for about, I believe this is 12 years. So I'm excited to be here and definitely share the hard work that our HAL folks have done over the years. I just have been along for the ride.
Okay, Dr. Rodenberg, that's not true, but nonetheless, we'll go with that. Okay, so moving on to this next slide, guiding leadership principles. And these three pieces truly are principles that Dr. Rodenberg and I not only talk about, but we really work hard to put actions behind these. And we also work with our facilitators to put actions behind these. And we work with our principals to put the actions behind these. And so we really work hard to live these out. And these typify one of the many reasons I jumped at the opportunity to come to Papillion La Vista from ESU3. I was direly missing working in a school district again, and Papillion La Vista, of course, is one of the best in the state. So we talk a lot about how high ability learners need services every day, every class, every level. Adam Larson, I credit him for coining the phrase, a hell kid's a hell kid every day. Every day, all day, whether they have, a snake wrapped around their neck or not during an animal seminar. I know, Deb, did you see those Facebook posts? They were pretty awesome. But every day they need they need to have their special services. Second, and I know Adam has heard this over and over again, but the identification of giftedness really needs to match what the district can provide in services, for a lot of different reasons, mainly because you set yourself up for not serving kids well if you're identifying on certain characteristics but not serving those characteristics. And then I smile here at the thought of the facilitators that we have in place here. There aren't very many of them, but they are really, really good. So at this point, Dr. Rodenberg will talk about some of those facilitators and the professional learning opportunities that have been in place for facilitators so that we can really focus in on these leadership principles.
So we focus our professional development based to align with those cognitive needs and the talent development that's based off of what we have identified our students as needing, as what they've been identified with the data. Our teachers, our facilitators have done an excellent job of being self-motivated through, professional development, through NAG, through book studies, looking at the growth mindset models, looking at Renzulli, but really focusing on how do we help take our students and further develop. I think about the SEL and the specific needs that our gifted students have, and how do we best support them. And Julie said, we don't have many staff. We have 4 facilitators, and they're mighty. They serve a lot of students and they serve them very well. But we do that because we stay focused on those areas, those cognitive areas, and how do we match their needs.
A question for you guys. You guys have really great, well-defined these guiding leadership principles, but maybe for schools who are a little bit newer or just now wading kind of into the HAL world, how do you recommend going about identifying your leadership principles?
We, excuse me, we did it through a program evaluation. We go through that evaluation systematically. And I think we look at those, we look at what's the research saying, we get feedback from our parents, from our students, from our community members, from our schools. I think it's like any other program evaluation or program development. You start by identifying, what's needed out there. And then what can you do? I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do within the HAL program, but you can't do it well with 4 people. And so making sure that once we have those principles and we follow those and we stick to them and we stay focused on what's most important for kids.
And I would just only add to that, but Deb alluded to it, you cannot get too many of these, really 3 to 5 would be the maximum number so that you can really focus and do it well. And as Deb said, start with the end in mind. You know, where do you want your program to be? And work backwards from there in terms of processing, like the same way that we do in curriculum work. What are the big rocks of our K-12 high ability learning services program? And yeah, and then do all of those things that Dr. Rodenberg just described. It's messy, right, Deb? But it's definitely worth it.
Absolutely, it's messy, and you'll get people with, you know, there's so many ideas and options out there, and so you have to stay focused on what can you do and what can you do very well that meets the needs of your students.
Yeah, I just one more thing, and I don't know. I mean, Adam, I'm maybe thinking you might be thinking this as well, but kind of a plug toward the work of professional learning and even Learning Forward Nebraska and International. But if a district is just starting, like just literally starting from scratch on some of these pieces, a good logic model could be helpful in helping put down on paper, electronic paper, just really the bigger pieces of, you know, what are the outcomes you want to get to? What might be your long-term goals, medium-term, short-term? What would be activities to get you there? What are your external influences? You know, what are historical influences? Those kinds of things. So that might be a really practical tool that could help some who are just really starting at that very ground zero level.
Thank you. That's really great advice.
Okay. All right. Next would be another slide about the messy work, but definitely worth it. First of all, that vision and purpose will link into the Papillion La Vista Community Schools program guide for high ability learning services. So Deb and I invite you into that. You know, if you find usable nuggets for your work from our guide, you know, please, yes, please enjoy. I know I lost my word there for a minute. But back to, you know, the guiding leadership principles, vision and purpose, as Deb mentioned, this is the kind of work that we do for all of our curricular content areas, for all of our instructional programming, those systemic and systematic program reviews, along with the development of and revision of a program guide. And so on the screen right here would be the vision and the purpose of our high ability learning program. And of course, given what we have from both like the state level and the federal level, you know, we school districts have lots of room, don't we, to do our thing. So that's both a, you know, it's both a blessing and a curse, right? So there's not a lot of concrete mandates when it comes to identification models and services models. So you get to do your own thing, but at the same time, there's not a lot of mandates or any for identification and services expectations. So you do your own thing. So, you know, just kind of embracing the duality of that and going through this messy work. And of course, Dr. Rodenberg was the one who was actually in Papillion La Vista going through the messy work. Yeah, Deb.
We talked about a little bit earlier when you and Adam were talking about, you know, you have these really great ideas, and those great ideas can, I mean, they just continue to build a program, but you have to stay true to your vision and your purpose. And if you don't know what that is, then it's very easy to be side railed. And lose focus of where you're going and why you're doing it. And so it is messy work, but it's so important. And it's so important to have many voices. You know, you hear from parents, we We talked to parents who had students who qualified for HAL. We talked with parents whose students were tested for HAL and didn't qualify. We've talked to teachers, we talked to community people. What is it that we need to do that's going to best serve our students within the guidelines we have? Because Julie said, there's not a lot of funds out there. And so how are we going to do it and do it well?
Any questions at this point for us?
Real quick, I am going to dump in the chat. I think people will have access to it in the recording, but the learning forward logic model that Dr. Sauer mentioned, there's a PDF that would kind of walk you through the beginning stages of that. I guess I do have a question about social emotional learning. So we've seen it show up on a couple slides here. If I was a school administrator who knew that all students, especially now, need some form of social emotional learning, and maybe even know that high ability students oftentimes maybe need a little extra support, where do you start with SEL, social emotional learning, for high ability students?
Well, I'm going to just talk about our district SEL for a moment. We've identified a core SEL curriculum and I'm going to speak just to the elementary level, And so, first of all, having a core, and our next slide is going to talk about that pyramid. And so all kids need that core. And so, including our gifted students. But the unique needs that our students who are gifted have, I know our team, we've done a lot of reading, watched a lot of webinars, just talking about the uniqueness of our HAL students, and also the misconceptions that our teachers have about our HAL students. And so our gifted students put a lot of pressure on themselves, but we as school people can also put a lot of unrealistic expectations on them by having misconceptions of what a gifted student is and their social emotional needs. So, we've worked, our team, knowing that this was a huge need that we had in our district, our team did what they always do, and they dug into it, they researched it, they found things that have been successful. And so they develop lessons that we do with our gifted students as part of our direct services when they're in the building. And so working directly with students on their social emotional needs, putting things together for parent resources, helping parents to understand those SEL needs that their child has. And so I think it takes a combination. It takes a combination of working with your school counselors who have some additional, expertise and training within that SEL. So I think, it takes the whole village.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I answered your question, Adam, but.
Thanks, Dr. Rodenberg. And this is our next slide, which would encompass the big picture of the tiers of services in Papillion La Vista. And Dr. Rodenberg was, just really talking about the SEL piece, which, as she mentioned, we consider part of that tier 1 core for all students, but students with high ability learning needs as well. And they do have those different affective needs. And as Deb mentioned, our facilitators are so good at seeking their own professional development and always learning and growing in that area. But also similar to the elementary, at the middle school level, we've adopted a really solid SEL curriculum that teases some of that out as well. So it's second step at the secondary level if anybody is interested in that specific name. And Deb, I'm sorry, I don't know the name at elementary of what we use.
Caring Schools Community.
So both of those, I know at the secondary level, again, it does tease out some of those affective domain needs that students who are identified with high ability learning needs would need some special attention for. And then, we move into that small group situation, and you can see that, and Dr. Rodenberg is going to talk about these a lot, because this is a piece that in Bellevue we were just poking a stick at, and Papillion La Vista just does this really, really well, moving from that the tier 1 core, where we have facilitators who are working throughout our buildings and working with teachers on a daily basis to differentiate core. And then we do have small group opportunities for students, because we all know that kids with identified high ability learning needs benefit from being with their peer group for part of their education. So it's also during those small group opportunities that our facilitators provide a little bit more in terms of that SEL that students might need. And then of course, there might, for extreme giftedness and or for extreme affective needs, then we might have them working individually with the facilitator, and as Deb said, with a counselor or perhaps even with a mentor. Bigger picture, another link into our program guide where you can access this and a little bit more. On the left-hand side of my screen, you can see a link right into our identification model. And I think this takes you into the program guide, and then you can look on the left-hand side at the table of contents, and you can get into our identification model. And as Deb already alluded, and I tend to sour explain over and over, our services are designed to match our identification model so that we can provide those with fidelity. Another huge piece for Dr. Rodenberg and myself, and this was true obviously when I was in Bellevue with Adam and at ESU, investing in the right people. We don't have that many. Dr. Rodenberg has her position, I have mine, and then we really just have 4 facilitators for grades 4 through 8. So they're working with teachers, and then they're working with kids, and they're working with parents. I know everybody in this audience knows that the parents are part of the services as well. We do have building contacts in all of our elementaries and our middle schools that these really, I'll use my quote fingers because they're more than just that, but through them information flows, especially about services and opportunities. And then at the high school, we do have 2 extra duty facilitators. So they're paid on what's called the back page of our contract, or they're paid an extra duty stipend to also help with the flow of information and to work with kids in terms of accessing the highest quality and the highest appropriate challenge for them through our courses and through our activities. I will share that, especially at the high school level, we are a work in progress there. We are, working on tweaking some pieces there and revisiting just to make sure that we are maximizing those positions. Dr. Rodenberg, would you add in here, especially about the seminars? I feel like those are Papillion La Vista secret sauce.
We have had what we call seminars for many, many years. And our seminars are just windows into areas of potential interest from students. So we survey our students and say, what do you have an interest in learning more about? And so we might have seminars that are tied to robotics. Adam, I think we had a group out with you not too long ago on the STEAM end. We do the arts. So just a variety of different topics. And so our purpose of those are to get, number one, to get our students who are like-minded thinkers with their peers from across the district. So students get the opportunity to sign up for these 2-day seminars and just based on interest. And so they come together, and our goal is to provide them an opportunity to peek into that, to that topic and to create an interest to learn more. It gives our students a chance to work with other students who have those same characteristics and needs that they have, and the energy and excitement that they have about a topic. We try to connect them with community, with business partners, with, Julie mentioned, the mentors, connecting them with people in those fields or connected to those fields. But regardless of the passion topic that they're in, all of our seminars are really focused on, that abstract, that critical thinking, problem solving, approaching things with a growth mindset, especially when the rigor and the demands are increased. And so we really want to have kids that have the opportunity to use that interest, but at the same time, we're building those critical life skills that our students need to have as we move forward.
And just one more note about this slide. If you access the slide deck, those are all live links under differentiation of Tier 1 core. And those are some of, just quite honestly, total transparency, those are some of my favorite resources when it comes to the big topics of serving kids with high ability learning needs.
And as Julie said, that differentiation that happens every day in the classroom with teachers, that has to be the core of what happens for not only for our gifted students, but for all students. And so, the time and efforts that our teachers take, our facilitators take to work with our classroom teachers, they do professional development at the building level. And we rely heavily on our building leadership to give them the opportunity for that to happen. Because we know that, especially with 4 staff members, students have many, many needs that we can't address. And so we rely heavily on that Tier 1 that happens day in and day out with classroom teachers.
Yeah.
And if it's good for HAL kids, it's good for all kids. So
I noticed that this looks an awful lot like an MTSS triangle here with the whole, some and few. Was that intentional? Were you thinking about MTSS and using that to design services?
MTSS has to include all students. And I would say that as you look at a HAL student and their needs, you could put students on this pyramid as well. As Julie talked a little bit earlier about, there are some kids with some pretty significant needs that are at the top of that HAL pyramid that we have to do things differently. So we can't approach our HAL kids in the same manner, the same as we wouldn't any other student. But yeah, HAL has to be part of your MTSS. It has to be your systems of support.
Brings me to a really short plug. Don't forget to, if you're interested in the HAL MTSS pilot that NDE is running, to visit my website and to fill out the school recruitment form. I would love for Papillion La Vista to fill it out if you guys are interested. But this is something that we are looking for to scale up to the state. So it's a really great foundation for that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne.
All right. Well, the next slide that Deb and I put in here and thought we would chat about for a few minutes would be the slide we're calling the Mythbusters. And boy, I mean, no matter where I've been or what my experiences are, or what school district that I have been with or I have been able to work with, kind of these big 5 continue to come up. And the first big myth that Deb and I have both seen and lived ourselves is this idea of money, and that there's a lot of money for students identified just with high ability learning needs. And there's also a myth that by that we mean the money comes from either the state or the federal level. And Deb and I are here this afternoon to bust that myth. Dr. Rodenberg and I did the math the other day. She pulled up the budget and we took a look at that. And this is the percentage for Papillion La Vista is roughly equal to what it was when I got to do this work in Bellevue Public Schools, but only about 14% of our entire high ability learning budget comes from an outside source. And so it is truly, it's truly a commitment on the part of the district, right? That we are serving these students with these special needs, just in the same way that we would be serving students with identified special education needs. So I don't know, Dr. Rodenberg, do you want to add anything to that particular piece?
No, and I think you did a nice job with that, Julie, because as we talk about the HAL program, and I visit with people who call from other districts, other states, and there are always those states that are surprised about, well, where's their IEP? And it's like, we don't have an IEP. And so they're like, well, then how do you do that? Because in some states, gifted students fall under the IDEA, the special education rules. And so with that comes the funding that comes through districts with special education. So for our district, it's an enormous financial commitment that they have made to our gifted students in order for our program to operate. And so, that 14% is great, but the leadership needs to understand that it takes a commitment and a long-term commitment from the district level. You can't go through the program development and go up and down and back and forth, and we have a program and then we don't have a program. It needs to be a long-term financial commitment from the district to keep it. You're right, Cheyenne. It's nice to have some steady funding over time, and it's not competitive, which is nice. But I really would encourage our district leaders to think about what's the program that you can sustain over time and build that program. Yeah. And so that those students and families have that consistency.
Well said, Dr. Rodenberg. And I would just try to tie this back to one of our first slides where one of our guiding leadership principles, invest in people. That's the best use of your money in a district, is to put that into people and their salaries, their benefits, and their professional development, because that's where you are going to get the best results for kids, and then the best ability to sustain something that's of high quality. The second myth that we're going to bust is this one that there might be mandates for each district to follow. And while Cheyenne, Deb, and I were just talking about you the other day, I hope your ears were like twitching a little bit because it was all good, in your short time in your position. You have taken this conversation about Rule 3 farther than anybody in both our collective time has done. So we applaud you for that work. And that's not to suggest that the others who came before you did not try. They did, but we are just really impressed with how you've been able to just really get on the ground with that and Rule 3. But Deb mentioned this already, especially when we talk with parents who have been from other states and even from, overseas and that kind of thing. There is not a mandate. There's nothing in law. There's some guidance-ish for standard, for identification, but really there is no standard identification model either in the state or across the country, nor is there a standard battery of services that should be offered for students with high ability learning needs. So in my and Deb's experiences, we've learned this is a little bit of a myth that's out there. This perception that there are really strict pieces that exist to provide that kind of guidance. And in our experiences, that's just not the case.
Right. And Julie said it well. I mean, Cheyenne, in the very short period of time that you've been here, I mean, this is a prime example of you have been providing professional development opportunities. You're connecting with districts. I have the utmost confidence that we're going to get some things good things are going to happen at the NDE level. And, you know, I know that we have conversations with Adam, we have them with Cheyenne about those underrepresented groups. You know, how do we identify kids? How do we make sure that we best identify students so we get all students that, I mean, actually all students would benefit from services. But, you know, how do we get some consistency in that identification for kids? One of the other things that, you know, is a myth is that club that parents want their kids into, get their kids into HAL, that it's like it's a club, it's a bragging rights, you know, and so we, you know, as we talk about services and you know, students, Julie said it earlier, Adam said it, you know, students need and deserve services every day, all day, as all kids do, but our gifted students need that as well. And so, you know, that understanding that pyramid, that MTSS, it's all systems need to support students. But we do, I think, have that mindset that HAL is an exclusive club that I got to get my kid into so that, you know, they're going to get this, I don't know, badge of honor. And I have bragging rights for that. So that mindset is hard to shift. And it's also hard to shift from, you know, you have classroom teachers who may say to a parent, well, I know your child's gifted. And it's the same as when I was a special education teacher, and teachers would say, well, your child has a learning disability. And so we're going to have it go through the testing process. And really, you don't know. And so, you know, just that whole mindset that, you know, we don't want you to strive to get into it. It's about targeted services. And that's the next thing on our list is, you know, talking about, you know, the services are aligned to our identification, to the interests, to the, you know, those affective areas, and making sure that it's not just activities, but that it's about services and programming.
Thank you, Dr. Rodenberg. Okay, the last one is parents, but Deb alluded to this through her, you know, conversation there about Club HAL and that activities and services. Parents themselves, whether we like it or not, we serve the parents of high ability learners as well. And I know that's a conversation that, you know, Adam and I and our small team would have in Bellevue and at the ESU. And Deb and I have that conversation with our facilitators a lot. Communicate, get out in front of it. The parents of students with high ability learning needs, they want the very best for their child, just like anybody else. Many times in my experience, I think Dr. Rodenberg's as well, they are very persistent at asking about those services and asking questions. And we have to be ready with really good answers for them, and not just words, but actions behind those words as well.
Absolutely. Over communicate.
And I think having a system the way you guys have it set up in Papillion, where there is mission, vision, beliefs, operationally defined things in your HAL plan. That lets you point back to when parents have questions about identification or services or any of those things. You can rely back to those earlier work that you've done that helps justify decisions, or whatever it might be that parents have questions about.
You're right, Adam. The more inconsistencies there are, the more parents doubt your ability to do what they doubt that you are able to do what you say you're going to do. And so that consistency and that program guidance really helped us pull that together and stay focused on what we believe in and what we are set out to do. So
Okay, last, Dr. Rodenberg and I would just like to offer what we're working on, and we've alluded to all of these already. The quality of services through all the tiers, but especially tier 1 classroom differentiation on a daily basis. So our facilitators, they have a lot on their plate because they actually deliver a lot of those seminars as well. And they really are charged with keeping tabs on, if you will, all of our identified high ability learners. But another big component of their position is to work with classroom teachers so that differentiation is occurring every day, every class for our high ability learning students. Deb mentioned this, equity and access. Are we teasing out the kids from low income or lower socioeconomic environments? Are we teasing out the kids from subgroups that typically are underrepresented in high ability learning numbers? So working on that piece, and Adam and Cheyenne, we know that you are working on that too, and we appreciate that so much. And then kind of where this, we talked about this early on, SEL, and in particular, those specific and very unique affective domain needs for kids of identify with high ability learning needs. So all works in progress, probably not different from a lot of districts. So we offer that just so that we, so that we all know we're all in this boat, together, trying to do the best we can for kids. That really brings us to the end of what Deb and I had to offer. So the last slide is just some more favorite resources. Those are all links into slides about, again, of some favorite resources that might be helpful for folks. So Adam, Cheyenne, if there are any final questions for us?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you so much for all of this information. I know that at the district level, it can be difficult to think about where do we start or what does this look like. And so this gives a really solid model for people to go off of. And I thank you so much for just sharing all of your expertise and what you're doing in your district to help those around the state.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you both for what you do, and all the others out there that
Yes,
are working hard to do what's best for kids who are gifted and talented.
If you don't mind, can you really quickly put your email up on the screen so that maybe if anybody out there has any questions, they could reach out to you?
sure. Should I go back to screen share?
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you would put your emails.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just add here. I'll go back to this
Excellent.
slide. Uh-oh.
Sorry. I thought I could click on it too, but I don't think we can, Julie. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You're fine. Deb, is yours Deb or Deborah?
Deb.
Sometimes I spell schools wrong.
I do too.
So check us here. Does that look right?
I think so. We got the thumbs up from Adam. That means it's right.
Okay, Adam, thank you. Okay, there we go. How's that?
Perfect. So that is the contact information. If you guys don't mind, you might get some questions about some different things that Papillion La Vista do as people watch this. And so thank you so much for again being willing to share.
Thank you for
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And yeah, thank you, Cheyenne and Adam, for not only this opportunity for us to get to share, but for these webinars, and for bringing people together the way you have been. It truly, it's been unique and special and quite fantastic. So thank you.